guys, so you might remember that a little while ago I did 2 videos entitled 10 books under 150 pages. I am a great lover of the short book. I think it is an impressive feat for an author to create something engaging and interesting in fewer pages than more. So I like to share with you recommendations of books that fall into that category and which are all perfect to fit in when you don't have a lot of reading time. So I have decided to do another of those videos, if you can't tell by the title, which means I am here with 10 more books under 150 pages that I love to recommend to you guys. So without further ado, let's have a look at the books. So in no particular order, let's kick things off with Sexing the Cherry by Jeanette Winterson. This is another one of her books that I thoroughly enjoyed. This one is pretty wacky. The plot's a little bit all over the place and there isn't really maybe one strand to follow. It's more of a exploration of different themes and interesting look at periods in history than it is a vigorous plot-fueled story, if that makes sense. It is, however, about a young boy who becomes a young man and his mother who live in 1700s London. It's set during the time of Cromwell and it intersperses its own story amongst pivotal events of British history. It also delves into fairy tales, like the fairy tale of the 12 Dancing Princesses, and our young boy actually falls in love with one of these princesses and is out in search of her, and at the same time kind of trying to be an adventurer and see the world, whereas his mother doesn't want to leave London. But really fascinating, and it's a really hard book to summarise, maybe a strange one to start off with in this video, but it's a really interesting work of prose and really beautifully written and really fuels the imagination, which comes in at 144 pages. But next up at 127 pages in the edition I have here is A Study in Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This is in fact the first Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson story. It is the novel in which the two characters meet and Dr. Watson experiences his first encounter with Holmes and his mystery solving ability, which is a strange mysterious murder that has taken place in a grand house and they can't figure out how it happened. Although I feel very strongly that you can start anywhere with Sherlock Holmes, really each mystery stands by itself. This is the natural place to go and an excellent place to go if you haven't tried any of the stories so far. But it really doesn't get much shorter than 43 pages, does it? So the next book I have is When I Grow Up I Want to Be Mary Beard by Megan Beach, and this is actually a collection of poetry. I absolutely love this collection. I read it for the first time this year and I think a lot of you will love it. I'm pretty sure my phone just beeped. Anyway, I'm sure a lot of you will love this one. It's very accessible poetry. It's themes that a lot of us will be familiar with. It deals a lot with themes of being a woman and a young person online. It touches on relationships, historians, authors, and so much more. Megan Beach's poetry has such a lovely rhythm to it, and like I said, I think a lot of people will enjoy this, especially if you haven't read much poetry and are looking for somewhere to start. I think this is worth checking out. And particularly if you're a Mary Beard fan, you will love the title poem. But the next one is my only cheat because it is 152 pages, so please don't judge me, but it's so close. Come on, come on. I'm sure you can deal with the extra 2 pages. And that is Cassandra Parkin's New World Fairy Tales. This is a collection of 6 fairy tale retellings set in the 20th and 21st century in different states in America, and there are slight touches of magical realism in a few of them, but they are very much set in a realistic setting, although with a bit of a kind of magical surreal feel to them, although not necessarily any actual magic. It includes fairy tale retellings like The Three Little Pigs, Snow White, Cinderella, and Cassandra Parkin's prose are magnificent. I honestly adored this collection. It's one of my favourite collections of short stories of all time. Thank you, Jen, for recommending it to me. In fact, did Jen send this to me as a Christmas present? I've already forgotten, but I think she might have. So even more thank yous, and I cannot push this on more people, so would highly recommend this one. But one which I read a little bit more recently, and you've actually probably seen me mention recently, so I won't talk about it too much, and that is Bodies of Water by V.H. Leslie. This comes in at 130 pages and it is a bit of a creepy, mysterious novel. I'm not really sure what genre it fits into exactly, but it flits back and forwards in time between the 1800s with our character Evelyn, who has been committed to a water treatment facility by her father to treat hysteria, and this building almost 200 years later has been converted into a block of flats next to the River Thames in London, and our second character Kirsten is just moved into this block of flats after a breakup. And it's about themes of water and mistreated women and the kind of blending together of the two stories, and it's really, really interesting and really engaging. And do you know what I'm gonna say? I would highly recommend it. That should be my catchphrase really by this point, shouldn't it? But if the 1800s is not early enough for you, I do of course have some ancient literature to recommend. And the first one is Theocritus's Idylls. This is a collection of poetry by the poet Theocritus, who is from the Hellenistic period of Greek history. He is often dubbed the inventor of bucolic poetry, and he touches on less heroic mythological themes than previous poets and hones in on nature and city life and country life, romance, festivals, and gives you such an intriguing insight into Greek lives, which I love. It's very unique. He does touch on myth here and there, but he uses myth to deal with small, individual, relevant themes to the period he is living in, and that's really magnificent as well. And I think his poetry is actually incredibly accessible for ancient poetry, and if you're trying to read some ancient poetry, this is definitely a collection I would check out. It's so consumable at only 84 pages and will give you a real taster for Greek lives and culture and literature, so would really recommend this one. But if poetry is not your thing, I also have to recommend you a trilogy of plays from ancient times, and that is Aeschylus's Oresteia. This one in particular is so worth reading because it is so rare for a trilogy of plays to survive from antiquity. In classical Athens, all dramas were performed in trilogies. So all of the other plays we have surviving are actually missing their companions, except for this one, which, like I said, is complete. It tells the story of Orestes, the son of Clytemnestra and Agamemnon. After Agamemnon returns from the Trojan War and is murdered by his wife Clytemnestra, and it's about that story and about Orestes having to avenge his father, but also being punished because to avenge his father he has to kill his mother, and the kind of complexities of that situation. And it's really important and interesting piece of ancient literature. But for a bit of a change, I actually have a non-fiction book for this video, which is rare because I think it's rare to find non-fiction that fits into this category, but it is Freedom is a Constant Struggle by Angela Davis at 145 pages, and I've mentioned this recently. You know I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I adored this piece of non-fiction. It's my first read from Angela Davis, who has for a long time been a part of many really important political struggles. And somebody just drove past my window in a motorcycle. God, I'm not having a good time with sound effects in the background today. But it deals with issues like police brutality and racism, the institutions of prisons, political activism in general, and how we need to approach that. And it's actually a collection of both interviews, speeches and essays from Angela Davis, and it's just very empowering, very inspiring and invigorating, and I would highly recommend it to everybody. Highly recommend everything, yeah, we know. But following on from that, something that is also non-fiction is the essay A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf, which I read for the first time this year as well. Virginia Woolf is not overhyped. She is amazing, her prose are amazing, and she has such important things to say, especially for the time period she was writing in, which was the early 1900s. This is an essay all about female writers and how women find it more difficult to be a part of the creative world, especially in Virginia Woolf's time, because of their restrictions on money and property, education and what they have access to, and how just in general people need income to support creative pursuits, which is very difficult. And that's something that still I think is relevant today, and I think it's a really important essay for anybody to read, even if it's necessary to sort of adapt it to our time. But last but certainly not least is a classic, a modern classic, and that is Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. I read this book years ago now and have yet to read any more John Steinbeck, which is absolutely atrocious because I adored this book so much that I just don't know how I've managed not to read anything else by him. But this, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. It is set in the United States of America and follows two men looking for work in a country that is struggling after a war. It is a modern classic for a reason. It gives such an interesting insight to America in the time it is set in, the struggle of looking for work, the treatment of those that are perhaps a little bit different, and it's written so well that once again I just don't know how I've never read anything else by John Steinbeck. If you have any recommendations of where to go next, do let me know. I was thinking I might read one of his more comical books next because I do like a bit of comedy. But if you haven't read Of Mice and Men, despite having heard about it, which I'm sure a lot of you have, then I would really recommend it. It is worth the hype. It is a very moving and engaging read. But that makes 10, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't seen the previous two, of course they'll be linked down below, but please leave any recommendations for short books in the comments down below. I love a short book. I love to hear about short books that you guys love, and they are always the books I gravitate towards reading next. If you have any thoughts on any of the books I mentioned as well, please leave those in the comments down below. But until next time guys, happy reading and I'll see you all again soon. Bye! The few stationery related videos I've put on my channel in the past have met with a very positive response, so I thought perhaps today I would do a bit of a stationery haul.